Hey everyone, welcome back to Yapping with YUCCA. Today we're speaking with Farah Nousheen, an organizer, DJ, and lifelong community member. We're going to talk about her journey in organizing community care and the importance of being mindful in a radical way as part of resistance. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Oh, okay. First, I'm just really grateful to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm definitely a Yucca fan. I really appreciate all the work that you do. It's really incredible and it gives me hope. So thank you so much. About myself, right now, I identify as an independent artist. Um, I've had many different roles in my life. Right before this, I worked at UNM as staff for the Asian American Pacific Islander Resource Center. I was the one staff there and doing like a type of organizing, I would say. And then before that, I was an academic advisor for like some of the interdisciplinary studies. And I also kind of call that somewhat organizing. And then I've also in Albuquerque founded the Yoga for People of Color for Healing and Empowerment. That was the original name. And before that, I've done other organizing, and that includes post 9/11 organizing, um, and actually also for Palestine. I've always, all throughout, have been organizing for Palestine as well as anti-war. So I've just done a quite a different bit of organizing, as well as in academia itself. As an undergrad, I looked at white liberalism pretty closely and organized students of color there. So I have a long I, long history and stories about organizing. So I'd love to talk with all of you about it.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I feel like one of the things we talk about a lot, even when we're like talking to different young people who are curious about like what organizing is and like what it looks like. I feel like one of the things we talk about a lot is how it maybe doesn't always look like how you expect it to. And it takes place in all these different places, right? Like in schools and institutions and through restorative practices too. And it's just, yeah, it's really incredible to hear a little bit more about like all of the ways that you've been organizing for so long, it sounds like, in our community. Yeah.
I know one thing we were also wondering is like how you got into this like community work and organizing as a whole also.
Yeah, that's a really great question. One of the things I really tell people is that when you know, you can act. So a lot of times people will say, "Oh my gosh, this genocide or whatever situation it is." Particularly right now, I'm talking to people um, about the state violence and just all kinds of things that are going on right now. And people will say, "What should I do?" The first piece of it is to really understand. And then you will know how you fit in it. You'll see where you are being called to. You'll understand what to do. So that first stage is really learning and particularly learning the how systems work, the isms. All of those isms are really important and they're connected. That's, heteropatriarchy, white supremacy, um, classism, capitalism, imperialism, colonialism. We got all of that, just how power works on these different levels. So I would encourage young people to just go learn as much as they can and learn also on while you're going there, while it's happening, watch other people. It's really good to observe first. A lot of like the ways are like the native and indigenous ways of teaching is to just shadow people, just to be there and observing. You don't have to do something right away. And you only need to do something when you feel that call. Like you'll feel this call and you can't help but do something. And that's when you do it, and you do it instinctively. So there's no reason to force yourself or figure out how to do something. It's first step is just to learn and to follow, watch other people, see where you're headed towards, see what you feel like learning more about, and then let your inner self lead you.
Yeah, no, that's really like an incredible way to frame things, because I feel like one of the other things we always like tell people who are first coming into yucca spaces too is like we also recognize that as you're learning more about yucca as an organization, and also your analysis is being shaped and you're learning more about the systems and structures that are really causing all of these interconnected crises, like you may also find that yucca is not necessarily your organizing home or the place where you intuitively feel like is kind of your place in the fight. I think one thing I was curious about too with like all of the work that you've done across all these different spaces is kind of what drew you to where you are now, right? In terms of, the work that you're currently doing in comparison to kind of some of the other organizing that you've done in the past, like you're talking about in terms of kind of this intuition kind of guiding you towards what you need to be doing right now. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. The other piece to this, without intuition, you organize where you're at, like wherever place you are, that's where you're organized. So the reason you're kind of seeing me and organizing here and there is because that's where I was in that moment. So we have to organize our own communities. We organize our own workplace, wherever it is. So, for example, I was at UNM when the first election of 2016, I call it the fatal election. While I was there, I was an academic advisor. So there, I've just found out where is the work being done, what classes, who are the people doing the work, and then who are the students who want to understand better. So just being able to connect them, and that's like organizing, you know. And and then the other way is like if there's internships, there is whatever opportunities there are, I let them to that. I also give them space in my office to talk about what they're concerned about. One example is there was a young man who was really like supporting the Trump administration, but I didn't like get like, you know, judgmental, nothing. I just was like, this is a young person and they have other influences. So we just talked all the time. He just kept talking about it, talking about it. And then he actually really went the other way. Like he's a complete leftist and all of that because he just needed to have that somebody to talk to. And from my point, that's organizing. And a lot of the young people in our community have been my students, or I've suggested a class to them and that class changed their life. So I think that you just organize where you're at. And the way that I did yoga for people of color was two ways. The other way to organize is like when something happens, I say this, when something happens, right? So when something happens, then you have to respond. How are you going to respond to that something happening? It's always, and it's that's what you prepare for. So if you prepare yourself through learning, when something happens, you'll know how to plug in. So something happened in 2015 in Seattle. So I'm located in Seattle right now. I've moved. In 2015, there used to be a yoga for people of color, and this class, I knew them, they were queer folks, and they just rented a space in like a house, the basement of a house. And it was just this like underground, just community thing happening. And then another white liberals, good studio. They meant well. They invited them and said, "Hey, you don't have a real space. Why don't you come here?" And they're like, "Yeah, we would." But now the word was out, it was public, and this white, I should say right wing radio station got hold of it, and it blew up, saying that how can they have a yoga for people of color? So this is like 2015, and right now BIPOC spaces are more accepted and understood. But we have to think about, there was a time when they weren't. And the place got actually vandalized, and they scared the teacher. It was really intense. It got watched. They had to close the studio down for a while. So I was in Albuquerque listening to this, and I was really impacted because I knew the people. I was like, how dare they do that to us? So I'm just gonna go get a yoga teacher license and start a yoga for people of color. So I made that decision right there because I was like, this is my culture. It's from my space. And I'm not gonna take this of somebody doing that and not allowing my community of people of color and then the art that I'm connected to, like, take that away like that. So I started teacher training, and I had to really find the right one because with teacher training there, it's so capitalist. It's very capitalist. So I went to different studios, and I found one that could send my work, and I told them what I was training for, but it was still like, intense kind of experience because it is predominantly white, especially at that time. And then right when I got into it, the election happened. So now the election happened. What am I going to do? Right. But I'm already in this teacher training. I already thought I was going to do yoga for people of color. I thought I would do it after the teacher training, but I said, I'm just doing it now. So I just started it. So that's how it started. So it's like having what I had access to, and also you need the courage because you need the courage and you have to know what the community needs. So the way that I figure out what the community needs is just by seeing what I need. The reason for that is because I'm part of the community. I'm a woman of color. I need things. I needed a place for uh yoga for people of color. Like, I needed that. So if I need that, chances are other people need it. And they did. The first class, so many people came, then the second, and it was just grew from that. And it went on to really becoming a community, and people were creating meditations and having like nutrition workshops for people of color, indigenous foods. We just kept going and going and just did all kinds of different things. And right before COVID, we had like 5 events in 1 week of different types, and people were coming to that. So we had really created a community, and then just remembering that something happens again. So COVID happened, and now what? So it's like constant listening to what's happening in society and listening to where you're at, what you have access to. So I don't know if that was a really long question, but that's how I ended up getting involved in different things. It's just where I was, what I was hearing, what I felt towards.
Yeah, I think something like just to put all of the pieces together. Something you had also said was that you need to build knowledge to like actually build that instinctive reaction. So like, what was the knowledge that you had like learned or like that led you to the instinct to have POC yoga and like that it was a needed space.
Yeah, that's really great question. Okay, as people of color, as people from marginalized communities and doing that, there's also the knowledge in the body. And we have to listen to our bodies, and where are we uncomfortable? What doesn't feel right? And then when something doesn't feel right, we need to investigate that. We look at scholars, we talk to people, we figure out like what's happening, what is this? So an example that I'll go back about my undergrad was that before I went to the university, I was at University of Washington. I went prior to that, I was really disenfranchised from academia and college and all of that because I started like taking care of my family at a young age. So I never went to college after graduating high school. I barely graduated high school. I could have easily not graduated and would have had to done a GED. Like I was not on the path of college at all. But I always wanted to, I kept wanting to, but there would be just taking care of family. There's always things happening. And then post 9/11, there was a lot of layoffs from jobs. And I had the opportunity to go to community college, and there was like funding available for those types of things. And it was in Seattle. So here, I didn't have, at that point, even though I had like understanding of racism against Muslims, I had understanding of racism as well as even Islamophobia. I had imperialism. I had some level of knowledge, but there was one thing I didn't have, and that was white liberalism or just liberalism. I didn't know that. So when I went to University of Washington, I picked a program that was completely a white liberal program. And I started feeling something in my body. And then I noticed that other students, I looked around in the classroom, the students of color also had the same look on their face. We're like, where are we? We were bewildered. Like, so I started talking to them. I started reading. I started really understanding and started talking to faculty, just whoever could tell me. And I hadn't even known that the space I'm in is a white liberal space. So this is back in this is a long time ago. This is 2006. So it was a while ago, 20 years ago. Um, so now I had to build knowledge, but I didn't know what to do. What do I do to figure out how to deal with this? And every time I would go into the classroom of my program, my whole body would, even now remembering it, I'm clench up in my neck, everything. I get anxiety, all of that. So the way to follow knowledge is to look, listen to your body, listen to, look at the space you're in, and create a systemic understanding of that space by talking to people, reading. And there was one professor, he named it liberalism. And that's when I was like, oh my God. And I read everything about it. And I said, oh, and this is very important even right now because the Democratic Party is really taking that. It's part of how things are happening and how even the genocide, how all of this is justified, that our funding goes to that is through liberalism. And then I learned everything about it. And so to counter it, I did the counter of it is to get the experiences of students of color uh, documented, recorded, and expressed, like giving them voice. So I did a thesis project on that. I did a thesis where they're in this program, they're saying how they felt in different classrooms, what they felt. So it really gave voice to them. And part of my thesis was the analysis of like liberalism and whiteness that created this environment that was bringing like a level of trauma, a level of bringing up things for us because we as people of color, we have memories in our bodies of experiencing racism, whether it's systemic or individual or whatever. And it was bringing that up, colonialism as well. So we have all of that experience. So it gave a chance to talk, for them to talk. And then in the end, after the project was done, the program really shifted. This particular program listened on some level, but they still, I would have said they should have celebrated the students of color more, but they just like undercover, they just like made all the changes. And so right now it's a better program. But that's like how to go about like doing change is to listen to your body, especially where it tightens. That's when it's
Yeah, that was making me think of, I don't know, like a lot of parallels I feel like we've seen in all of our work, especially with what you're saying about like in spaces that are so dominated by like this kind of white liberalism. Like what you feel in your body when you're entering and also when you're coming out of those spaces. Like one of the things that came to mind for me was a lot of the policy advocacy work that we try to do during the legislative session in New Mexico. And I think every time that legislative session ends, everyone, I don't know, at least last year, there was so much conversation around how just like depleted folks felt, not even just from kind of the workload that went along with it, but being in those spaces and like engaging in the dynamics that were going on there. I don't know, like,
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
emotional and like spiritual load that it was putting on folks. And I really appreciate like your intentionality in like addressing that and being able to notice within yourself, like, oh, I am not regulated. Like this is happening. This is making me feel some type of way, and diagnosing that. And then being able to also provide that resource for your community, that like is absolutely wonderful to me. Yeah.
wait. Okay, wait, one thing missing. Thank you so much. That's exactly what happened. So when I did that first project of interviewing students of color, the culture was very different because this is back in 2006, 7, 8. Activist communities did not have spaces of self-care and community care. In fact, even in the 70s and 60s, when we did organizing, when we all did organizing, we just worked all night. We worked all the time. We pushed ourselves, and we were also like in shock. I was up all night all the time talking to people. I actually got depleted in that in that organizing, and I didn't have the lesson of self-care. And in fact, a lot of the post 9/11 activists and organizers were not employing self-care at that time. So it really impacted my body. It really impacted my brain. I was at a point when I couldn't work anymore. So I had to like take a break and figure out what's happening. And it was actually beyond that. I had to really heal from that experience. So later, when it came to the election of 2016, so here I was just building, and so you have to do what you can do. You can't organize beyond your capacity. So during the time between so this organizing that I had done with students of color as an undergrad, so I'm in my 30s as an undergrad, I um, was head on organizing just all the time, talking to people, looking at white supremacy, having workshops, just like doing a lot. Then after that, I got depleted. So then I was doing low level organizing, just like little bits here and there, what I could do. And by the time I had the election 2016 happened, I knew at this point I had learned that students and people of color are going to be fighting, they're going to be out there, and they're going to be depleted. They're going to need a place to come to. So I learned that from experiencing it. So I didn't know right away. So I went through that phase of not knowing, and it was also a culture at that point among organizers. We just fought head on, but the culture did change so that there is some level, but it was still not enough to say people of color need to be in a different space. So, and there was still not that self-care is community care. That concept wasn't there yet in when I started doing yoga for people of color. And actually, there was at that time, there wasn't like land acknowledgement. There wasn't acknowledging all genders. So before every yoga gathering, and we call them gatherings instead of classes, so there's no hierarchy. I would make sure we all acknowledge the land we're on. We acknowledge that gender is an infinite concept, that there is no way to define. So all of that was built in. And then the other thing that was built in, which is organizing genius, is for people to say what's happening. Where's the actions happening? What kinds of signatures do people need? What's happening? So that way the organizing happens in the space. So it became an organizing space and a community care space. And then it also became a space for survival things, like somebody would say, I need a roommate, or I need this. And then somebody will say, I have that, I know that. So it became like we became a community helping each other with the things we need. It also became a space for storytelling, because in the beginning we would say, what's going on? And someone will say, I'm going through this. And then we'll give them that space to be cared for. So it served multiple purpose, and the interesting part is it's just called yoga for people of color. So the people who are out of it would imagine a white yoga class or a typical yoga class and just think that you have to be stretching and doing this thing. But that's not what we were doing at all. We were having a closed space for people of color to talk to each other and say what's happening with immigrants, what's happening with everywhere. We're learning from each other because Black people there's indigenous people, there's Asians, everybody is there. Queer, trans, everybody is there. So we could see the oppression and the policies that are affecting everybody. So we like, if somebody is not part of that community, they can see what's happening in that community. So we could learn from each other. So we were actually building knowledge about racism, because one of the things about racism and white supremacy is that it affects bodies differently. So the way, like right now, the trans bodies are being impacted differently than immigrant bodies and Muslim bodies. So we all are experiencing different, but we have to be able to understand each other. We have to have the solidarity, and the solidarity, by having it in a healing space, we can see how were people, how are they being hurt. So we could see that, we could learn right there and learn from each other. So it created a space to build knowledge. It created a space to organize. It created a space to heal. It created a space for resources for survival that we need. So it created it served several purposes. And then it also was a space to build ourselves having a spiritual consciousness, meaning meditation, yoga from the spirit level. So we were really working on many different levels, and it went on from 2016 to really well till 2020, and then even in 2020 we were really strong at 21. So it's about up to then, and it was a really it impacted enough people so that there were a lot more people of color who had yoga license now, teacher's license, who can teach. So many of them were there, and then also a few yoga studios became open to that, so the change is like rippling, if you can see. So it like seems like, oh, it's just a class that people are just doing yoga. It wasn't. It was many things. So just that's the thing that I want all of you to also organize with this mindfulness class to remember you have community resources, which includes knowledge. It includes like survival mutual aid kind of stuff. It includes just time for rest. So just thinking about what are all the things you can do when you're together. You ask a question and I just go on and on.
No, it's great. It was what you were just saying was making me think that maybe we should take a second too to talk a little bit about kind of some of the mindfulness for the movement spaces that have been going on at YUCCA. And so I know like Tori and Zain that like both of y'all have really been like leading that work for us. So I was curious too if y'all wanted to share a little bit more about, you know, what kind of similar spaces have looked like for YUCCA and kind of, yeah, any parallels you're seeing too. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that here within Yucca, and Zan had also like graciously brought up to us, probably with the like thought of you behind this and inspiration of you behind this, of acknowledging the current burnout that people are facing now. And what you were saying was just bringing me back to our systems were never built in a way to where we were supposed to build community. It was supposed to be an isolated thing where we cannot take care of our minds, bodies, and spirits. And so, like, a part of all of this movement, yes, 100% is building those actual containers for us to build community, for us to heal, for us to lean into these other things that stop making us as reliant on these systems. And so I know that like with the mindfulness for the movement, that was one of the things that we were also trying to do was like build the space for people to heal together, since we don't often get that space in this like super emotionally taxing environment that we're living in right now.
Can I just say one more thing before Zan speaks? Sorry. Is that Zan was a kid when he was coming to the yoga for people of color. I don't know if he said yet that I'm his mom. Yeah, so he got that, and there were other kids too. So we really gave that space for kids to understand and absorb this. So making sure to invite the entire families when we're doing this. So Zan, when he told me about this, it's in his body again. He knew how to do it. He knew what to do because he's been in it. He was in the space, and I have pictures of him sleeping all the time. So it's great. Okay, so I just had to like bring that up. So, but you go ahead, Zan.
No, it's okay. I feel like that segues into what I was saying, or what I was gonna say, or one of the things I was gonna say, which is that, you know, when I was younger, it was a little bit, I think, confusing for me as a kid. Is like, what was it that made that space radical? Because I don't think I had enough of analysis or an understanding of how other spaces worked, and I think it was something that I really questioned when I was a kid, or even like when I was like in middle school, just like not completely understanding, not wanting to understand to an extent. But over time, and especially now, I think I really can see like, I mean, I evidently definitely saw how important it is to have a space where like we are able to be together for free without kind of like the pressures of the rest of the world on us, especially like that being like a space that was like that's like a mutual aid space like that didn't exist, that you just kind of brought into existence for people to have, and especially as like a space to talk and to communicate away from surveillance for the most part as well, right? Like where we're in person with each other, trying to organize and like figure out, you know, what's going down, what's happening, you know. And I think that is something that is very valuable that we don't often have. So yeah.
That's really excellent. Yeah, that was a very big thing. We were off the radar. Like everybody that came to our space was people who identified as people of color, and which meant that there was a level of race consciousness. And just want to add one thing to that is that when people go to a healing space, they're really vulnerable, and we are like, but in that vulnerability, we can see how systemic oppression works, because we are on some level, in some way, wounded, needing healing, and somewhere, and that's where we're speaking from. So we're speaking those emotions, and so it's important to create that space, to create the emotions, not just to have emotions for a space for healing, but to understand how the systems work, like, because they intentionally are making you feel the way you're feeling. That's what they want you to feel. Wherever it's hurting, they're making it hurt that way. And then to create the type of mindfulness, the type, even in that space, that addresses that injury, that wound, that whatever it is you're feeling. So just that mindfulness as a practice has so much, so it's limitless of like how much you can do with that. So to just also think about that, and I can talk more about that if you like to, or you could also tell me what have you, so I'd like to know, what have you seen in your space? Because you've had a few spaces already created.
Yeah. So I think with us, the like spaces that we have been able to create, we have like really been able to see also after being able to like exactly what you were saying, have that like container to engage like with our community in like a way that like you normally don't get to. And so with that, we're able to see like how helpful this actually is, and that it is filling the need of like everybody doesn't really know what to do with all of this built up emotion that they're facing on a daily, right? You open your phone now and you're confronted with some of the worst things you could see. And then some of us that are like doing active like organizing work are also then going to our organizing work being like, okay, so this is all I have to like focus on basically. And it doesn't feel like there is much hope a lot of time, and a lot of escape, and a lot of togetherness, right? You are always fighting together. You're never healing together. And so I think that that was something that like we've really been able to see, is that like we are finally being able to provide the spaces for people to heal with one another, which I think is like really important, especially in the time we're in right now, and us having to do all of the work that we're actively doing right now.
Yeah, I really want to like echo what you said about how we're always fighting together and not healing together, because I think that in itself is also part of our like programming, if you will, and like kind of the the like what actually like this capitalist society, and or like this really evil imperial capitalist society, whatever you want to call it, it wants us to do is to not heal with each other. So I think it is really important that we do heal together. And it's like when we look at like, you know, pre-colonial societies that like of color, and like indigenous societies, there was always time built, or like I guess there wasn't, like, yeah, there's always like time and space to be together and to heal. And like it's always like integral, because that's an integral part of like relationship building and organizing and being in community with each other.
Yeah, and one thing I also wanted to like say is like appreciate both of y'all for bringing this to our communities. This is a very important thing for folks to have a resource to. And we didn't always have that resource, even though it was such a big need here. So I do really appreciate like all of y'all's work in providing this for the community and recognizing a very hard need to fill.
Yeah, I think one of the things that this space has made me like reflect on too a little bit, just as we've started to make this, you know, like a recurring, consistent space too, is just thinking about how, especially in organizing work, I feel like we are constantly, like you were just saying, we're taking on all these new fights, right? We are always in spaces together where there's all these demands and pressures on our time and our energy and our emotional labor too, right? Whether that is like internally within organizations, whether that's pressure from all of the different systems that are creating these conditions. But it's also made me reflect on the fact that having spaces like this is also a really essential piece of us building trust with one another too, which I feel like is something that can sometimes get lost in this like day-to-day chaos sometimes, right? Of always feeling like we have to keep moving onto the one thing after another and feeling really the urgency behind all of the work that we're doing. And also recognizing that at the root of it, what is also allowing us to do this work in a way that's effective is that time that we don't get as often as we should to relationship build with each other and to rest together. And like you're saying, to heal together without all of these other pressures on our time. So yeah, I am just also appreciating how valuable these spaces have been too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing too to that, couple of things. The other thing you're creating is passing it on. When you're creating the spaces, you're creating culture. So there's a cultural change that's happening. For example, the Nove who leads the mindfulness, they were from day one with yoga for people of color, and they were at that time. The other thing that's happening is a cultural change. So by me by creating the space, we're creating a cultural change, and we are passing on the knowledge of this, that we all need mindfulness, that we need community care. It's being passed down. So this yoga for people of color, it passed down this knowledge to Zain and to Nove. And then other people, there are others who were there. So now they know it and they have taken it to a different level or a different place. So we're spreading it. So as people come into the space, they'll connect with that certain part. There'll be somebody who's like, I really want to be able to lead this, and they'll go and learn how to lead. So we continue to pass on the knowledge, and we are creating roots. You know, so it's not just a space that's there for that time period. It's building towards the future. So it's creating a container for those future young activists or future activists. Because one thing we know for sure with systems is that something is going to always happen. There's always going to be that, when I say something, you know, that attack, like the things that have been happening, if you look, you know, COVID, then it was anti-Asian racism, then there is this. It's just like ads and ads, so that we need to be ready to take care of each other, take care of ourselves, and to pass that knowledge on. So I think that the way activism could also be seen as successful is, did it pass on the knowledge? And right now I feel really good. I feel so just amazed that it was strong enough to continue. It continued. So while I was in it, I was thinking about that, but you never know until the future becomes present whether it worked. So, but continue to think about that while you're organizing this space. How can the knowledge be passed on? And one of the things I did too was to make sure different people led different mindfulness or the parts of the evening, you know, so that they are accustomed to it. Like somebody could say one person will say the land acknowledgement and the introduction, another person will lead the stretching, and another person will lead the core. So we would do this so that everybody levels up and learns, so that it's not so hierarchical, and it continues. So, and that I see worked. You know, it's like your evidence that it worked.
Yeah, that kind of made me think also like about kind of how just the ability, like the I think going back to kind of what you were talking about earlier about this building knowledge and always gaining knowledge, I think, and like having that as a base for your organizing. It also, I think, helps you build the vision for things. Because something you had talked about earlier is like, you know, people just think it's like a normal yoga class because it's just, but it's just for people of color. But, you know, you had a vision of so much other like layers and aspects to it that you don't normally see in what you would think is a yoga class. Like also, you know, with it being completely donation based and like it was all essentially just out of your work to wanting the space to happen and having it be a potluck space and you know, like having it be in a space where everyone can talk and allowing youth and allowing kids to actually be there as well. And like so many different like random aspects would be brought in. Like sometimes you would give people like massages too, and then you had the meditation, and then we would do readings. You would have speakers. You know, there's always like something added on, but it's not like, you know, to have that vision and that it's like something that doesn't exist. You know, like it's like creating that.
Yeah, and I just remembered another thing that we had was called critical reading circles for the community, because you can also listen to the community and create what's needed. So we were noticing that not everyone had the analysis, and we needed people to have the analysis, for example, around casteism. So yoga as well as mindfulness comes from Buddhism. Are we also culturally appropriating it? How are we to this knowledge? So so we thought we really need to have critical reading circles. So we would come up with what can people read, and we would send this out, and it would be around some kind of topic, and then we would get together and talk about that work. And so we had outside of the actual so that's how we ended up having so many events in a week. Like we would have a critical reading circle, and they would read about that. Do you remember that, Zan? You've been to a few of them.
Wait, the critical reading
Oh,
circles?
yeah. You were at a couple of them with Raquel, remember?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was you guys meeting up for your dissertation.
I can send you, if you want to know about that, I can send you a link on the critical reading circles, because we did a lot of reading on what is imperialism, what is community. We read basically scholarly work. We just talked about the critical reading organizing work. So we read that. What I was thinking about is like, we said that this is yoga for people of color, but then we really expanded it. We had Halloween parties that were sober, like because many people talked about how like um on Halloween, there would be just no safe spaces for queer people of color, for people of color, as well as where it's families can come, but we could still dance and have a good time, and also not have like not be around offensive costumes, racist costumes. So we created like that kind of space for the community too, and that went on for several years, like having our own party. And then we had all these different things, but it was all came from what does the community need? Is somebody saying us realizing that we need some more readings to build analysis, and people didn't quite understand. So then we created the critical reading circle, and then someone said, you know, I know that we are doing yoga, but we also need to learn about nutrition and have indigenous ways of having a food justice. We need the food justice. So then we added that. So we kept adding and adding. And I think that, and then even during COVID, we were meeting every day on Zoom for all of 2020. We addressed anti-Asian racism and brought in the organizers who worked on that. So it's just like, what do we need with what is happening is really important. And I have one more thing to talk about, but is there anything else or to add to that? Or
What were you gonna talk about?
uh, the other thing is also to know when to stop, if that makes sense. When it's time to shift or move on, either because you no longer perhaps understand what's happening, or you're burnt out yourself, or the something else is needed. And that was that was a challenge for me with yoga for people of color, because I did not know how to organize in the post-COVID environment. It was like, just how do I do this? Because I was basing it all on us gathering together physically, and like the whole culture changed. So I had to know, okay, it's time to create something else. Someone has to take over. Something else has to happen. So I had to know to also not do that anymore, because it wasn't even maybe it doesn't need to be just people of color. Maybe it needs to be activists, or I just did not know what to do in the current environment. So um I did like shifted, I did other things and people did other things. So it's also like being aware of the changes that are happening and when to transform it. So keep an eye on that as well. And one last thing is, when you're doing the mindfulness gatherings, do you talk about YUCCA, like what's happening with YUCCA, other programs and
Yeah, that is definitely like an integral part of it is using it as a space, or like having it as a space for base building and to organize, and like that is definitely something that I got from your space as a kid. Is that like that is kind of what is needed, is like a space for people to talk and for us to share. And I also would like to highlight your point on like that sometimes things need to stop, or they need to shift and they need to change, because I mean something I have always lived by, or I have definitely learned from you and Baba, is that things are in a constant state of flux. Things are always constantly changing, and there's always a new need from the community, or a new way of doing things that can be done to effectively like heal the people in the community, and heal the people, and effectively get the people to do and get what they need. So yeah, and then
I had heard you say something more about your reading circle that you had had. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more in depth about what that was and what need you had seen for that.
well, we started having a lot of people come in as we grew bigger. Like there was many people coming in, and there was always this question of, why are we having this space? What is the need for this space? And that meant that people had to build their analysis around white supremacy. Casteism was a very big thing, because yoga, where it comes from, is India, and how the history, how to be critical in our approach to the space, because we also have to realize that yoga has been culturally appropriated, it's been commodified. So we had to be able to talk about that. So we had to talk about gender, we had to talk about all of these isms and be able to have people to understand. So just as we were talking about knowledge building, we wanted to have a formal space. Like, yeah, we could do the knowledge building by hearing ourselves and learn from lived experience. So that was like lived experience kind of knowledge building, but we also needed the readings, the critical readings that are there. And we brought in a lot of like academic articles as well as essays written by organizers. So we brought those in so that we could read it together. We send it out. We had the reading circles like once a month or so, and we would send it out. Like we would just come up with some articles based on what we think people are needing. And it was led by Raquel was her name, and she led that, and we just worked together on figuring out how to do that. So that meant that, those reading circles happened at her place and they were also happened at other places. So we would really have this whole other space that came out of this space for the community. So another thing that did was, as people of color, we need community and we need to be able to not feel like alone and isolated and lonely. So if someone was going through a hard time, they had a place to go. Like they could go to the reading circle during the week, they could go to a meditation, they could go to a yoga class. So they could do all of these things and whatever they needed. And it didn't feel like some space didn't get enough. It's like everything that we provided or created was needed. And the need was there. So critical reading circles, that was really there. So just listening to your community and seeing, does the community need this?
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that. I know that we talk a lot here about making sure that folks have like an aligned political analysis, because it was just making me think back to what you were saying earlier about like the white liberalism and all of these different movements that have taken off to kind of solve the problems that we're having. And yeah, how someone's political analysis is really going to also determine how they see that change should be done. And so it makes the most sense to start at the baseline of, okay, let's give them the information. And so I really appreciate all of your intentionality for all of the organizing you've done throughout everything you've shared today.
Thank you. And the Black Panther Party, they had like political classes too. So that they brought that in. So it's something that's been happening by other organizers as well, that if we're serving the community, they have a particular need. They're getting, it's mutual aid. So they're receiving yoga. They know that they need that. Now that we have connection with the community, and this is when we could tell them, the reason you're exhausted, the reason this is happening is because of this system. You can connect it and they will be able to analyze their own experience. It's not just healing, but it's an understanding of their experience.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. Tori, what you were just saying was also reminding me of what you had said earlier in the conversation around how to know what your community needs, right? Is about also reflecting on what you need and recognizing that is oftentimes, if you are actually organizing in your own community, the same needs that others have. And I think just with what you were just mentioning, Tori, around, right, the kind of like saviorism too that we see in spaces sometimes, just, yeah, what you had said earlier around the importance of making sure your organizing is grounded in your community, instead of speaking for folks and kind of swooping in despite maybe best intentions, right? To try to support folks in ways that maybe are not what's actually helpful, and maybe is actually causing harm in other ways, right? So I don't know, that's just was making me reflect on that. And that's a piece that definitely stuck with me too.
Oh, I'd like to talk about my current project that is interesting. And I think I've talked to Zain a little bit about it, but I'll talk. So again, it's listening to my own body. So right before this was DJing as a response to Palestine, because I felt like all these artists were creating music and we needed to get their music out there as well. So I was DJing, and I'm still DJing. So that was my official response to the genocide, and that doesn't feel like it's connected, but it is, because we have so much resistant music right now. So so it also it music brings people together, and it's also good for the mind. So that was the project before the current one. So my current project is looking at the intersection of art and trauma. So when I look at my life and to these really big events, 9/11 election, the right-wing election, the genocide, as well as like to a personal catastrophe I had was when my father passed away. So just these, and then my own self, like I've had, I'll be talking more about this. I do have complex PTSD, and I think that many people of color and different people of color can have that. And it's something I haven't really publicly talked about, though. Just my son here has seen me in that state when I am traumatized, and I have to like rest and calm and then move to the next thing. And what I've noticed is that I always turn to an art. So what is it about experiencing a genocide funded by the empire that leads to DJing? Like, what did my mind do? And 9/11, it led to film. How is that connected? And, the election led to yoga. So these are all different forms. And then when my father had passed, which was very shocking for our family, I started playing capoeira, I started drawing. So how are these arts connected, and how did they help me heal and then also build community? Through all of those, what I had done intuitively was turn to art and community as a response. So what I'm doing now is really looking at that through knowledge building of like what's happening neurologically, biologically when we face trauma, and what is it in the art that helps to respond to that, like what is it in the community, like really getting more into it, and which art is the right one for which trauma or which response. So really analyzing that and then creating my own art to respond. And then the other thing I also realized is that yes, I like responded to my trauma of experiencing something. I responded by doing the art. But when I did that, did I really understand why I was traumatized? Because for me, it was survival. So I went straight to this art form so I could survive, and it became and community. So it became somewhat, it alchemized from a negative to a positive, but then it left this piece out, which was my own understanding of my mind and myself. And now that I'm in this age, I'm in my 50s, I can like be in that age when I could get out of the survival mode and like look back at these moments and see what did I miss? on me and the community, what reflections are needed, what else do I have to say and the connections between these different traumatizing experiences that are political or personal. And it's always, uh, the personal is always political. Yes, my father passed, but we were undocumented. He was working 14-hour days, 15 hours days. His health became so bad as a cab driver. Cab drivers in Chicago and New York and in all of these places were exploited. And there has been activism. You can learn about that. So even when we have something personal happens, it's always connected to a political system. So just me going back and revisiting those moments when I responded so that I can tell people such as having this conversation with you, I can have more information. I have some now, but I want to like go back to that moment, go back to my mind and just see how did it process that? How did it make these connections? And look at complex PTSD as well, because there are people out there who we have that complex PTSD and what's happening to the brain. So that's my current project that I'm doing, Seattle right now. And I'll definitely you'll definitely hear about it
No,
more.
I really appreciate that and the explanation as well. Some of my original background is also like in the arts. And so even though that's not like the path that I like want for my career, I 100% use the arts as a way to heal. And so, like with Yucca, I've been doing a lot of creative resistance work. But yeah, that's just making me think of different ways that we can also bring the arts into a form of healing. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And there's so many different arts. There's healing arts and spiritual arts, such as meditation. And there's also visual arts, performance arts, martial arts. So we have a lot of different arts. There's multidisciplinary arts that can help us to respond
Yeah.
as resistance, like what exactly you said. These are all resistance that we're responding with. I'm really glad that you're doing that.
Something that you did hint at that I always think that you like don't talk about enough, that I don't know, it always like makes me feel like why don't you like hold this so prideful, is like, your connection to film, and like, you had talked a little bit about, but like about your film festival that you created, as well as like the movie you made after 9/11. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, after 9/11, that was a big one for me because prior to 9/11, the way Asians were, South Asians especially, and Muslims, we were invisible. We were so invisible in society. We were in the background. In fact, like at one time, I actually thought that I might not exist because I was so invisible. Like I was like, do I really exist? Maybe it's my imagination that I exist, which I know is like a crazy thing to think of, but
No.
that's how invisible we were. But when 9/11 happened, it was the other extreme. We became hyper visible. Everybody's watching us, everybody's hating us, there was like people hating us, then there were people who wanted to know who we are. So we had to speak. Suddenly we had to be seen and we had to speak. So at that time I was really just loved film. I used to just go to the theaters a lot, like independent film, global film. So I called an independent theater, and just told them, maybe you should show a film about Muslims or Palestine or South Asians so that people could learn. So it was against my thing to build community and to get knowledge and art. So there was like my combination that I always responded: education, art, community. And the theater said, it's you would be the best person to find the right film and to bring people. It's not like we could do it, but we may not do it right. And this was very smart of them to say that. And they said, we'll give you the space for free. We're here for you. You lead us. And that was amazing to hear. I was like shocked at that time. Like, wow, I can do this. So that's what I did. I showed the first film that was shown, that I organized was Edward Said's Orientalism, um, the documentary, and I also with it was a it's called The Chronicle of something. It was basically a Palestine film that was with a Wes Anderson style. So it was like this art, and then it went on to become an organization right now that is huge. So 20 years later, there's a film festival that came out of that. It's really big. And then, as Zain said, I also wanted to understand what Muslim women are thinking, and there weren't films that gave voice to Muslim American women. So I felt like that needed to be out there, and we needed a voice. So I made that film. And I think the reason that I don't talk about it as much is because I'm so self-critical about it. I like missed this. I'm like, I should have done that, should have done this. And then when I look at it, all I see is like these mistakes. So like that's why I don't talk about it too much then. But it
Just
does,
remember,
but I think
perfectionism's a colonialist ideal.
yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Perfectionism is, and I need to always remember that we have internalized those things. So that's one of my that's where I gotta liberate. When I could talk about that film in a proud way, then we know I'm liberated.
One day.
It'll
One
happen.
day. Yeah, I'm a Virgo too, so that's
Okay.
just that.
Yeah, I think like also the thing that I think keeps coming up from you is just this like when something doesn't exist that you think needs to exist, it's like you just create it and it just happens. And I think that is definitely like a key to organizing. And like really like what I think is needed is like it's that initiative and that intuition like coming together to really just make stuff happen. Like the sphere is huge, and like you get directors from India coming to actually like they're at this point now, and like it's has such a huge reach. And now you guys have a theater, like your own theater, and it's like it grown, and it's just like a seed you had planted because it was like, hey, this is just something I think should happen.
Yeah, you didn't only
And
go out of your way to find a resource, you built it.
yeah. So just to talk about the foundation, analysis has to be the foundation for it to build. So this organization that Zain is talking about, it's called Tasveer, TASVEER.org. And the thing that it's built, but what I am, the organizing piece of it was that it was built on radical and social justice values, because there are film festivals that are around that are South Asian or Indian, but they'll just show anything. But this organization from the start shows radical films. And it's like it also, instead of being India focused, it's South Asian. So it covers the whole region. By being South Asian, when you use that term, it's anti-colonial because the process of South Asia was to create these nations and divide them after the post-colonial work, neo-colonialism that happened, was so that, for example, Kashmir, there is that conflict is and that occupation of Kashmir is created through post-colonial means. So instead of saying an Indian festival, you say South Asian. So building that from when you build anything, the analysis has to be there so that it can carry forward. So now the Sphere is actually one of the few organizations that's called South Asian. instead of Indian, and you can look that up, and it's one of the few that gets filmmakers from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, looks at the war in Sri Lanka, while a lot of other festivals won't. So building that foundation, and then and this is back in 2002 to say it's queer. Like that was not around either. Like right now, queer is trending in South Asia spaces. They know that they have to do that, but this was back in 2002 to start. I was intentionally started on Pride, and it started with queer films to tell people, and it started out with several like Pakistani trans women. That's in 2002, like showing work from them. So just knowing how you build it, it needs to be built. It's because the reason I say that, because what liberalism does is that it will build something and then add it later. So they'll say, oh, the community is not ready for queer voices yet. So we'll build this and we will add the queer voices later. No, it starts with the most marginalized. It doesn't start, we don't add the most marginalized later as an afterthought. They need to be foundationally in whatever we're building.
I feel like there are so many people that I wish could hear what you just said,
100%.
because I think it's so foundational to these spaces. And what you were saying about, the analysis needing to come first as well. Also, in all of these like stories that you've been telling and all of the work that you've done too across all of these different forms of art too, whether that was like BIPOC yoga or film or your work right now as like a DJ. I think it's also really cool to think about the ways that art can also help to shape folks' analysis and help to draw some of these connections for folks, because I think that's something, especially just with so many interconnected and like heightened what feel like crises going on right now. It feels like people's attention is getting pulled right in every different direction in ways that are sometimes feel very like siloed between different issues unless we look at things systemically. And so a lot of what we talk about a lot of the time is how do we like get folks to think intersectionally about things and how to draw these connections. And I feel like art and like creative resistance and all of these creative spaces are such a powerful way to support that too. Yeah. I was also curious too. I know that we like touched on your current work a little bit, but I was also curious, is there anything folks can do to support your work right now too? Yeah.
That's great. That's such a great, thank you so much. Well, it is. I think, okay, this is kind of another piece that we always have to talk about is courage. Courage is always needed. Like for me to, again, I always go back to this thing of like something happens, right? And if you have to have the courage to do something. And again, and that's a hard thing, especially if you are creating something that doesn't exist and you're kind of creating as a individual. And a lot of the things I've done are like starting as an individual and then people are coming in and then it becomes community. So I think just giving me encouragement to do it and to have that that my work is supported. And the other thing that's always needed is like some kind of funding is always needed. So, or materials are needed. So just like me being and things like I need to put up a website and I'm not good at that. So if someone can help me make a website and someone can help me with the social media part of it, or to, do those sorts of things that I don't have the skills for, or like I need I want to get some easels in the space. So I have all of these materials and things that need. So just kind of letting me know that and just to able to listen to me to talk about this, because I have to be, when you first create something, you have to just talk about it, even before you get the community together. So usually the stages it happens is you think about it, then you need people to just talk to about it. And then there's that first meeting to bring people together, but you have to be, planning to prepare for that one meeting. And then there's the next meeting, which is going to be a bigger one, and then a bigger one. So it goes in these stages. So right now I'm really in the individuals stage. So I would love to just get, just hear from others of like art, the intersection of, it's basically it's the intersection of art, education, community, and trauma. It's like all of those together. That creates.
No, that sounds great. I think one of the things that I'm wondering is if there is anybody that has access to these different like resources, which way you would want them to get in contact with you.
Yeah, I think you can contact, I guess Instagram is there. There's also I can give you my email.
Okay.
Also just call me. I'll give you my contact information.
Yeah, we can.
You can also just ask San.
We'll put it in the description. I can
Yeah.
give it to them. I know like we're on the tail end of the interview, but I did want to just highlight one thing that I feel like has been talked a lot about, or is just like about the different ways art exists and kind of how I think I see your organizing as art in itself, and like how you've left your pieces of art in like the places that you've been. Like Seattle has and like has you in it, and now as well as Albuquerque does, because not only what you did, or like not only because of like POC yoga and meditation, and like what you brought to that side of community, but also like your advising as well, did leave a big impact on like a lot of different, like hundreds of students, because you advise so many students, and like kind of how that is like that exists, and like I really appreciate that this focus on art, and like something a homie said the other day, I think like yesterday, was like that like life is a constant brush of strokes, and like you're making your art is like your life, your art piece, and like your art is very four-dimensional. So, yeah.
Four-dimensional, I love that. Yeah.
So,
Being a mother or a parent is also an art.
It 100% is.
is there anything else you'd like to share?
You're my biggest accomplishment, son.
That is so sweet.
I feel very honored to be your child right now. So.
Well, this has been really amazing to be a part of too, especially with both of you, and just like hearing too how so much of your work and like the lessons and things that you've learned throughout your work has also been passed down. And we're so lucky to have Zain here too, organizing with YUCCA. And so, just really appreciating this conversation and just everything that you've brought into this space and shared with us today. Yeah, it's been really, really valuable.
Yes, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you today. And you did an amazing job raising a child with an amazing political analysis as well. And so I think that you're doing an amazing job sharing the resources, passing knowledge to your community, to your family, and being able to really help boost these movements in a way that are really beneficial and helpful. So I really appreciate getting to hear all of your thoughts today and speak to you today.
For having.
Thank you. So glad you were able to come. So yeah. Also would like everyone to come to the Mindfulness for the Movement every third Sunday of the month. It's United We Dance on San Mateo or San yeah, San Mateo. we'll put it in the description. So yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today, y'all. I hope y'all also have a great night online.
Yeah, have a great night, and hopefully we will see y'all at Mindfulness for the Movement.
Yes, hope to see you there.
Hold up, shut it down. Don't hold on to what is now. Don't fall through, cut it out. Rebel music, bump it now.